Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, stop this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. Everybody in this context refers to us and our cats. You are free to feel however you want about Rand. He's a fictional character. Please don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
We can just make this very quick.
Nothing important happened. End of podcast.
Well, you guys, it was another week of reading Wheel of Time. And I don't know what to tell you, but there wasn't anything good about it, so...
There was nothing good about it.
Yeah, there wasn't any particular points of interest. Talmany's wasn't in it.
Talmany's wasn't in it, unlike the chapters of Knife of Dreams I read on Monday.
Oh yeah, that is so nice.
And he rolls up.
Is a redemptive figure in most chapters.
Yeah, like, unfortunately this was from 2-1's point of view, but it was very funny that
so she couldn't be like, and sexual arousal lit within me as I saw Talmany's, his tiny body and his horrific haircut.
But she said something basically like he was very small and like very like tightly wound, like a very serious man. And I was like, yeah, that's my husband. Small and serious.
Everyone describes Talmany's as tightly wound, like a spring.
Like a spring.
And I'm like, that's so
sexy of you, Talmany's.
You really went off with that one, Robert Jordan.
Yeah. He had to give Talmany's the world's ugliest haircut, otherwise he'd be too powerful.
He'd be way too powerful.
It's like Hashirama in Naruto, who had that ugly, horrific bowl cut as a child.
Oh my god.
He had to have a character flaw, and ugly haircut is the way to go if your character is too hot and perfect.
Yeah, that was right. Hashirama was perfect, otherwise never did anything wrong in his entire
Nothing wrong with him. He was hot, he was powerful, he was dumb.
Sort of dumb, yeah.
He was the perfect man.
I wasn't expecting to like him when they showed up. I was like,
me either.
They'll just make him kind of a boring, all-powerful man, and they're like, okay, but he's actually stupid. And I was like, oh wait,
hold on.
You found the secret. The secret to making men appealing is that they're kind of dumb, but very powerful.
It's like Luther in the Umbrella Academy. His arc from season 1 to season 3 has been like exponentially better because he's just gotten stupider and stupider.
Himbo arc. I know, it's been so fulfilling.
Yeah, and you're just like, yes, excellent.
Yeah.
I don't need men to have thoughts. I need them to be pretty and funny.
Men, this is an invitation. Just be a little stupid.
A little stupid.
It's actually pretty hot.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, be a little stupid as a treat for yourself and for everyone around you.
And for me. Yeah.
It's like
this Pride Month.
I'll
be partnering with
both
stupid men.
That's why this Pride Month.
To make bisexuality appealing again.
Oh, but anyways, Talmany's has a bad haircut, but he's not here, so what's there to even talk about?
Speaking of bad haircuts, remember Elliot Page's wig in the first episode of Umbrella Academy season 3?
Yeah, that was really bad.
God, they were like, we will character assassinate his hairline for some reason.
For this first episode, and then he gets a lovely haircut.
Yeah.
When he transitions in the show, and you're like, thank God.
But also, that moment when he walked into the barber, you were like, what is there to work with? Yeah. There's no hair.
The barber looked like he was being very nice, but if I saw that hairline, I'd be like, I feel like they had it way further back on his head than it should have been. It was like he had the world's biggest forehead.
I mean, like, Victor Hargreaves always had kind of a high forehead because they gave him that atrocious, like, center part look.
Right.
Which really works for some people and doesn't work for other people.
Right.
Yeah, Elliot Page looks way hotter with this new haircut.
Yeah, with this lovely new haircut that they give him.
Tybalt. Remember how Ed leaped on the counter this morning right in front of us to
There was
chase a
like
bug?
the funniest series of events. Did you guys tell how much we don't want to talk about We Live Time?
Yeah, I don't. I'm
We
not
might
gonna,
not.
I'm not gonna delete this. No notes.
This like series of events this morning. So if you guys don't know, I had surgery last week. I had my gallbladder removed, so like a pretty minimal surgery. I'm doing okay. Do not fear. But anytime you have anesthesia, and also they were like messing around in my stomach, so, like I've been super nauseous, so they gave me this little barf bag at the hospital that I've been carrying around with me like a little teddy bear.
Just in case. Little
Just in
safety
case,
barf
you know,
bag.
it's my safety barf bag.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to like barf on our couch, you know. And Tybalt has been obsessed with it for a full 6 days. He's been like, what is this contraption?
Tybalt loves anything that crinkles
Yeah.
or makes noise of any kind. Loves
Yeah.
paper products.
Yeah.
Loves plastic products.
For a while, his favorite toy was a piece of shiny paper that came in one of the packages that we got.
Oh, yeah. He loves that little toy.
Yeah.
I tied it to the end of a shoelace. That
Yeah.
was like 2 of his favorite toys combined into one. He's a very low maintenance cat in some ways.
But anyway, this morning he finally we spent like 6 days, mostly Emily like pulling Tybalt away from the barf bag. Like you don't need to be in there. And this morning he finally
He managed to...
managed to, I don't know, be left unsupervised for 45 seconds around the barf bag, and he got stuck in it. And if you don't know,
his
like,
whole head.
medical barf bags have, like, a plastic ring around them, and then it's, like, just a bag, you know?
Yeah.
It's not like a paper sack. It's this, like, little plastic thing. It's a little plastic circle, and he just got his whole head stuck in it, and he couldn't get it out. And obviously, this was the funniest thing I've ever seen, so I had to take a picture and send it to Emily before helping Tybalt immediately. He wasn't, like, in danger of suffocating or anything, but it was just, like, he kind of, like, whipped hhis head around a little bit, like, bringing the plastic bag into the couch. And so Emily came downstairs to hold Tybalt and mock him. It was pretty funny. And while we were like, Tybalt, you're the dumbest cat in the world, in both of our lines of sight, and just hops up on the counter, which he knows is the one thing he is not allowed to do.
Yep.
He knows it. And he was just like, I don't give a shit. He just hopped up on the counter in front of both of us to chase some bug that we could not find.
Our house is full of bugs.
Yeah. I found a bug in their water fountain yesterday.
Yes, they have a water
R.I.P.
fountain.
They're-
No comments, please. They're very
Listen,
spoiled.
I fully believe in the cat water fountain. The amount of times Tybalt was like, I'm dehydrated, so I'm yelling at a sink,
Oh, man, yeah.
was unbelievable.
He's such a stupid little creature.
Running water for cats is great. I am fully in support of our bougie water fountain for our cats.
I mean, it's not even bougie. It was, like, one of the cheapest ones they had.
Yeah, they probably do have ones that like look like little mushrooms or
I
something.
should give it a name. I've named all our other
That's true.
cat-adjacent appliances. We have our Roomba, Baby Jessica, because it gets stuck in places. And we have our automatic cat feeder, which is named Executive Dick Wolf, which if you saw Executive Producer Dick Wolf, because if you saw it, you'd know why.
Yeah,
It's very phallic. It has a sort of silo for holding just a
shaft.
Yeah, just a shaft, to put lightly, and then it has at the bottom 2 circular receptacles for bowls. So just visualize that and you'll see. Anyway, I need to think of some fun name for...
With a cat fountain?
I'm 2 for 2 with naming
Yeah, they were
appliances. I gotta
pretty
think of another
funny.
one.
They're both pretty good. So anyway, Ed is just the naughtiest. Ed is the sweetest cat in the world,
I'm mad at him.
but also the worst cat in the world.
Yeah, it's fine. I love Ed until the moment when it's 2 a.m. and he's like, time to scream. And I'm like, is it fun? I've been hearing phantom cat screaming.
I have too.
At night. Jeez, do you think maybe we have a neighbor whose cat is screaming? Or
Maybe. I just am like so...
Yeah, you're so attuned to it.
Yeah, because I'm like, I'm falling asleep, and if Ed yells right now, I will probably lock him out of the house.
Yeah.
And so I'll be like, I swear I hear him. I've had this for like weeks.
I've just been worried for the last like week and a half because I can't really hear when they scream over the AC, which is very loud.
Yeah.
When my door's closed, so I'll be lying there like, what if Ed's screaming right now and Sally's lying in bed listening to it, but can't get up because she had a hole put in her abdomen. How bad I'll feel.
If it makes you feel any better, I have been pretty conked out on pain pills.
That's
I
good.
haven't heard him.
We did have a dog. One of our neighbor's dogs was barking last night for seriously like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Which I was like,
is
take
your
care of
dog
your dog.
okay?
Yeah, jeez.
What if there's like a problem?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a dead body in there or something.
That would be fun and exciting, but I don't feel like we'd be able to not know about it because I feel like our apartment complex would be like, if you see anyone murdering one of your neighbors, we will fine you $200 and evict you on the second warning or something.
You can only commit one murder. The second murder is where we
you can
draw
only
the line.
witness one murder. How dare you witness a murder?
How dare you witness
You need to
a
turn in
murder.
your neighbors when they murder each other, okay? We are the police! And we do not want to do our jobs.
They really are so bad. They're just like... Speaking of the bug problem, Emily tried like 6 times to get them to actually come, like bring an exterminator. And they were like, that doesn't really sound like our problem.
Yeah, they finally did bring us an exterminator, but it was like, I don't think he was really a professional exterminator. I think he was like a guy they met in a Walmart parking lot who had exterminating equipment, and they were like, "Oh, we can hire you cheaply, to go not do any actual exterminating work, but just sort of
wear the
appear."
uniform." Yeah. He had the same little machine that the other maintenance guys have brought around.
They all have the same machines, and they don't care what sort of bugs it is. I feel like if you're an exterminator, you should be able to identify the bug. That's all I want from you.
Be like,
well, I mean, I also want you to get rid of the bug, but if you can tell me what the bug is, then that will alleviate a lot of my anxieties.
Yeah.
You know?
If you can just be like, oh, it's just a little bug.
It's just a little guy. I just want an exterminator to say, it's just a little guy. There's a lot of them. But they're just little guys. They can't do anything. And I'll be like, okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, authoritative figure.
Yeah. Super duper.
On I'll go with my life. Well, we're 11 minutes in, and...
I think we've provided the people with high quality entertainment.
I repeat, I am not going to delete any of this, so...
That's just been the update from EHR. They didn't see us, they didn't hear us for a week. They want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
I had surgery. Ed's been extremely naughty. Tybalt got his head stuck in a bag.
And I've been here.
And Emily's been here, taking very good care of all of us.
No.
As I've pathetically been like, can you please bring me a Gatorade?
You have not sounded raspy like that. You've sounded slightly drunk and slurred when you were on Oxy.
Yo, we watched The Umbrella Academy Season 3, guys, previously referenced. And at the end of it, I was like, that was super confusing. And Emily's like, you've been on Oxy for almost all of it. Of course, it's confusing.
I mean, Umbrella Academy Season 3 also made some confusing choices, I will admit. And it's a show about time travel, so that doesn't help it much. But yeah, between that and... Imagine if we'd watched that one freaky cult documentary this weekend while you were on Oxy.
The Deep End, I would have gone into like a full paranoid fit.
Yeah, I won't blame you. I basically did anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't even have any medicine to blame it on. This, despite all appearances to the contrary, is Everybody Hates Rand. It is a Wheel of Time podcast. Whether we talk about Wheel of Time is sort of an ongoing question
Really,
that I think we'll be answering more and more these days with no.
Heart.
We might mention it.
Finger hearts.
No. The little BTS heart thing.
Little K-pop
How do
hearts.
they do that? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I have a really hard time with it because of my fingers, but you just like cross your thumb and fingy and make a little bit. Your fingers are too long.
I know. I have freakish long fingers. Stop laughing at my fingers.
No, I love them. I think you have beautiful pianist hands.
Thanks. This reminds me that I have a plastic life-size replica of the Fingy from the Fingy anime in the mailbox currently. I'm giving it to Devin for his birthday. Nobody tell him.
Nobody tell him. Devin, don't listen to his podcast.
I don't think he does.
That's fine.
Well, I think he did at one point, but now he doesn't have to commute to work as much, so he doesn't listen to podcasts anymore. Right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Struggle just to get him caught up on Critical Role. Okay.
We've also been watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. There. That's the full update.
Oh, yeah, we're, like, solidly 2/3 of the way through it, and we started last, like, Friday.
Yeah. Well, we haven't been doing anything. I've been laying around, half drugged.
Yeah, it's just sort of, super good.
Yeah.
And more prevalent
Yeah.
as we sort of skid into a dystopian wasteland of a country. I'm like, yeah, this always makes sense. I do believe that my government would try and create immortality by sacrificing my life and every other life in the country.
Yeah.
Except for the few rich and powerful.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound that far-fetched, and if magic existed, I would actively believe that it was happening. So
Yeah. So if anyone knows that magic does exist, you're obligated to tell your comrades.
a comrade. Alex Louis Armstrong. I know he's not Russian, but...
It would be great if he was.
Okay, I don't think we introduced ourselves. I'm Emily.
I'm Sally.
And,
This is my ice pack.
yeah, Crossroads of Twilight, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's pretty rancid. I would, if I were to rank these chapters, I would say they are throw them in the toilet kind of chapters.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, in terms of what continues to happen.
That was not meant to be a challenge, for the record. That was just sort of yeah, I concur.
No, it's fine. If you get further and further into Crossroads of Twilight, Matt's arc gets more and more heinous, and more horrific things will be said and done around him that he just sort of responds to ambivalently, which is very frustrating. So, these are relatively fine as you take them in the arc of Crossroads of Twilight. All that's really happening is...
Matt's talking to various people, yeah.
Yeah, and he's getting various news, and Tuon is being insufferable. Well, what else is new? But as they stand on their own, it's just Tuon won't call him by name. She only calls him Toy, and that continues forever. It's very gross.
I think she finally starts calling him Matrim when they get married.
Ew.
And it's, gross.
No one, not
At
even
least
his
call him
parents
Matt,
call him
I know.
Matrim.
Calls him Matrim.
But, so that's, horrible. Tom comes back and is like, Tylan is dead. I'm just jumping all over the place.
Well, yeah, this is great. Tom comes back and is like, Tylan's dead. And Matt's like, oh, that upset me in a way that I didn't expect and anticipate. But,
Yeah.
wow, ouch. I have to deal with that now for the rest of my life. Because she got killed by the Galam, very obviously.
Yeah.
Oh, and now Beslin's gonna be king, I guess.
Oh, R.I.P.
Not great news.
Altara.
Yeah. Les Miserables himself.
Yeah, I will, in attempt to give you some type of analysis, I will say about Matt's grief that it is, Matt's grief about Tylan is, I think, interesting because grief is a very difficult emotion. I always find people writing about grief in its various forms very interesting. It's a very, unpredictable... I would say grief is almost, more of an experience than an emotion, and it's, very unpredictable how anyone will respond. Matt has his pretty classic Matt response and kind of just, collapses a little bit.
Yeah, has a physical response before he has a...
emotional response
Yeah.
and can kind of recognize what's happening. But it's also very, sad, first of all, that it happened at all, and the way that it happened and the way that it ended is obviously very violent and upsetting. As complicated as Matt's feelings are about Tylan, he didn't want her to be dead, But Matt also feels very responsible for what happened because he's the one who tied her up and basically, quote-unquote, left her for the Galam. What I want to say is this, and I'm borrowing this kind of concept from the book The Shawl. Oh gosh, I can't remember the author. It's Cynthia Ozick, maybe? It's a book...
This sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's on our bookshelves. It's a book about, it's a very small book, about the Holocaust and concentration camps in Nazi Germany. So if you're interested, the general kind of trigger warnings there. But there's a very interesting scene in the book where a child is killed by the SS guards at the concentration camp, and it's very awful and very tragic, and the sentence about it is basically this one person did this one thing that basically brought attention to what was happening, because children if I'm getting it correct, it's like the child, if you did not know, children were killed immediately in concentration camps. Basically, if you were younger than, like, I think 15 or 16, you were automatically killed when you entered the concentration camp. So books about children in concentration camps are fictionalized. So there's your Holocaust fact of the day. But there's a child that ends up in the camp, and they're, like, hiding her from the guards. And it's basically like, someone did this one thing, and that brought the guards' attention to the child, and the child is killed. And the line is basically like, so-and-so did this, and that made the child dead. And it's a very interesting sentence in the way that it kind of posits cause and effect without it necessarily being any person's fault that this child was dead. Because ultimately the fault of the child's death lies with the guard who killed it. But obviously, like, you lay blame on yourself because you were a participant in that action, but it was not your fault. And I feel like this situation with Matt really reminded me of that because, like, yes, Matt tied Tylan up under the bed, and that led to the Golem killing her, but it's not like Matt left her there specifically for the Golem or called the Golem's attention to her, or even called the Golem's attention to himself. And obviously, like, Matt can't, intellectualize these emotions away, but I think it's a very kind of, like, poignant thing in regards to Matt being so, like, heavily entrenched in the Shanshin situation right now, is that when you're dealing with these very, very violent regimes and violent people, so, these big horrific empires, or the Golem is basically like a serial killer, we can kind of classify it in that way, and neither of these things, people, organizations, like, have a conscience.
Right.
Serial killers obviously do not have a moral conscience, or they would not be going around killing and hurting people in these really horrific ways. And empires and these sort of fascist authoritarian regimes also do not have a conscience. And in fact, they sort of actively enable individuals to not have a conscience because they're able to get away with these truly horrific acts with no consequence, like killing children or enslaving people. So it's very hard in this situation, because obviously Matt's grief is very real, and he does feel that he was a participant in this action, but the fault does not lie with him, literally at all. So that's what I have to say about Matt's grief.
Yeah, that's really interesting, a comparison between the Golem and Empire generally, and Matt's feelings of responsibility towards one but not the other.
Yeah. Oh, good point.
Which, there's some logic there. Matt himself did absolutely nothing to cause or bring about the Shanshin, but Matt being who he is sort of what caused the Golem to go after him, just Matt's importance in fate, as insofar as you buy into that.
Right.
But, I don't know, it is interesting. It is interesting. It's a very, like, complicated thing, and there's a lot of nuance to it. There would probably be more nuance to it, and it would be probably a little more interesting if the way Robert Jordan had always written about Matt and Tylan had always been, not in a comedic light,
Yes.
But as it exists, it is still very much framed as, like, Matt had a really complicated relationship with Tylan, whether you are categorizing it correctly as abuse or incorrectly as, an unbalanced relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so his reaction to her dying is complicated. And I appreciate that it's not, like, overdone.
Yeah.
Like, it's this sort of, like, passing moment, and Matt will reflect on it occasionally, but Matt being Matt, he's not like Rand lying there on a bed just sort of bemoaning it, listing Tylan amongst his dead people that he knows.
Truly, what circle of hell did Robert Jordan crawl out of to create that character point for Rand?
Yeah. But, like, Rand and Perrin are just like, I will think about these things constantly, and I will overthink them, and I will just, sit with it and not come up with any new thoughts or conclusions, and that's realistic in its way.
Yeah,
it can be annoying to read about, but people are like that. People
Yeah.
do that. But it's similarly realistic, and I say this as someone who is more of a Matt than a Rand or a Perrin, in this one sense. It is also realistic to have someone who feels something, is like, oh, that's a feeling,
Yeah.
and then just promptly moves on because,
Yeah.
well, that isn't fun to think
Yeah,
about.
of course.
So, I don't know. It's one of those nice nuanced things, which is offset with this sort of batshit crazy stuff that's happening with the Shanshan and Tuon and romance. Misplaced romance.
Misplaced romance. What a good phrase, and what a way to describe these two. One quick note. This is a very small moment that is packed with, like, so much nuance. Like, you could keep peeling back the layers on this for, like, I could write a whole essay about this one moment. I basically just did. And it's so funny to me that, I mean, this is often the case. Like, if you are, like, a very deft writer, like, you can pack a lot into a very small moment because
Right.
you've had the appropriate build up. You don't need to overdo it. But I feel like Robert Jordan, and again, I don't know what the man was doing, but this feels like it was almost accidental.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That he just has this, like, incredible nugget about abuse and blame and cause and effect and guilt and grief, just in this, like, tiny little moment of Tom being like, Tylan's dead, and Matt, like, collapsing. And it just feels like that was just, like, a passing thought that he had and just barreled on.
Yeah, whenever I, like, feel anything in Wheel of Time, I'm like, that was surely not the intention
Surely
of the
an
writer.
accident. Yeah. That was definitely an accident.
That was not what Robert Jordan thought anyone would feel or was planning on anyone feeling, and it's probably the opposite of what he thought they would feel.
He'd probably be like, oh, it's funny that Matt collapsed again.
Yeah, it would be really nice to say, wow, what, writing prowess of
Yeah.
Robert Jordan, but one can only imagine that this was, at the best, accidental.
Yeah, and I would feel very different about its intentionality if Robert Jordan was more strict and intentional with the way Matt and Tylan's relationship was classified. Like,
Yeah.
I would feel like it was more like kind of the ending of this arc of abuse if he was like, this was an arc of abuse.
Yeah, but instead Robert Jordan was always really ambivalent about,
Yeah.
like, what it was and how we were supposed to feel about it, and da-da-da-da-da. And of course, ambivalence can be really powerful in its own way,
Yeah.
but too often Robert Jordan was like, this is funny, ha ha ha.
And I would be like, cock the gun.
Yeah, so, that's probably the most interesting plot point of these
Yeah.
chapters. We find out that Tylan's dead. Tuon won't call Matt anything other than Toy. She's mad at him because in the story he's concocted about his and Aegianon's relationship and why all these people are running away in the circus. Tuon and Seleucia are like servants who they just had to bring along so they wouldn't blab
Yeah.
about this love affair and escape. And Tuon's mad that she is being portrayed as a servant, which is just sort of an example of how unhinged Tuon is, that she cares that much about status
Yeah.
and how she is perceived. And again, if that was an intentional thing, then there would be some power in that. We would be like, that is an interesting, not a good, but an interesting character trait about Tuon, and speaks a lot to how she was raised
Right.
and the sort of life she's led up until that point. But as it is, it's just seems like Robert Jordan picking things at random to make Tuon angry at Matt. But Matt and Tuon and Seleucia and Satalanon, I guess, just have this little conversation in the wagon where Tuon and Seleucia are being more or less held, with Satalanon as an unofficial guard
Right.
and a few of the Red Arms, like, actual guards outside of the wagon. And everyone's like, it's so creepy how they're not screaming or crying or throwing a fit. And it's like, okay, well, even if this was a real case of kidnapping, which it's difficult to classify as when Tuon was such a freak about it,
Yeah.
even in real cases of kidnapping, you never know how the kidnappee will react.
Yeah.
Trauma is a very complicated thing, and it affects everyone differently.
Yeah. You could. There's the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, baby.
No,
And an infinite number of variations of those.
Yep, tons of different things one might do, so...
So for everyone to just be like, I can't believe this tiny woman isn't crying.
Yeah, and that's why when you watch, like, police procedurals and the cops are like, they're clearly lying because no one would react to their dead husband in this way.
Yeah.
Being told that someone is dead in this way. Okay, that's not true.
Yeah, it's almost like maybe the police have not been trained in trauma-informed care. It's maybe, like, the police don't give a shit about people. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Someday I'll tell you about how the police could have caught Jeffrey Dahmer, like, right away.
Emily, like, will listen to her true crime stuff. For her, someone who can, like, read about... It's so funny how everyone has these, like, different interests. For someone who can, like, read about the Holocaust at length, I, like, can't do true crime. And Emily will be like, listen to how the police fucked this up. And I'm like, how does the institution still exist? When, like, there were, like, 100,000 serial killers in the Pacific Northwest in the 70s, and the cops couldn't catch one of them.
I was listening to a podcast today. There's a really good podcast you all should listen to called You're Wrong About, which is just a few journalists. I think the hosts vary a little bit, but at least one is a regular. But it's a few journalists just sort of like talking about things that were big pop culture moments or that a lot of people have made assumptions about due to the media, like the Satanic Panic or whatever. That the facts of these cases are very different than what we all remember and have been led to believe in some cases. And I've been listening to a few episodes where one of the hosts, Sarah Maxwell, maybe? Sorry if I don't remember your name. Where she was talking about how, like, the idea of psychopathy is so overwrought, especially in, like, fiction, because it is propaganda that allows the police to not do their jobs. The, like, mythos of the serial killer who can outsmart the police. When in reality, most serial killers are just, like, normal dudes who fuck up and make a ton of mistakes, and their neighbors will be like, hi police, this apartment smells like dead bodies. And the police are just like, oh, well, this is a black neighborhood, so I don't care.
Oh, boy.
You know?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Police are like, oh, the serial killers are too smart.
Yeah. Oh, please. Every serial killer that the police have ever encountered has been like the Sevenin guy, you know? Just methodical. So smart. We couldn't possibly have caught them without great personal cost to ourselves. And it's like, actually,
bestie, they're all pretty dumb.
They're all pretty obvious, you know? Jeffrey Dahmer had a guy run out of his apartment while Jeffrey Dahmer was in the process of murdering him and run to the police and be like, hello, this man's murdering me. And they were like, that doesn't seem right. And Jeffrey Dahmer was like, hello, police. It's me, Jeffrey Dahmer. This man is my boyfriend, and you simply don't understand what's going on between us. And the police were like, sure, take your boyfriend home. Where Jeffrey Dahmer then finished murdering him. And besties, that was the first time that happened.
What the fuck? The police were like, I simply could not understand anything homosexual. Obviously, he's right.
Yep. The police didn't catch Jeffrey Dahmer until the second time a man escaped from Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment.
Once is an instance, but twice is a hobby, Jeffrey Dahmer.
I just can't. I cannot.
You can get away with one
We're
murder.
36 minutes in and I'm seriously not going to delete anything, so...
I just mean, like, for fuck's sake. He was like, this man is murdering me. Why am I surprised? The police are just, like, reek of incompetence. They're always going to side with the aggressor if he is, like, a white man at all.
Yeah. I believe the first man who escaped was, Laotian, I want to say.
Excellent. Yeah, of course.
He also was having some serious consequences of the things that Jeffrey Dahmer had done to him, including brain trauma, so he probably wasn't making, like, a lot of sense, which is not to excuse the police.
No!
But it's just, like, clarifying the situation a little bit.
Yeah, it's just, like, again, not to make this a, like, abolish the police episode of EHR, but abolish the police.
And the Supreme Court while we're at it.
And the Supreme Court, yeah. But it's, like, again, going back to the idea of trauma-informed care, like, if someone comes into you who obviously has both, like, physical brain trauma and, like, trauma in the more psychological sense, bring in someone who can better communicate with that person than your average Joe Schmo cop, you know? Like, try to get to the heart of what they're actually saying. But the police are like, I'm too busy killing people and giving away speeding tickets.
Yeah.
To simply give a shit about someone who's obviously in crisis. God damn it, what is the point?
So basically what I'm trying to tell you is if you're ever watching a movie about like a serial killer in the 80s and it's about the cops and how the cops just couldn't possibly keep up with the serial killers, that's Copaganda and you are not immune to it. None of us is.
None of us is immune to it, but now you have the tools to say,
now
this
know.
is cop propaganda.
Emily told me that this isn't real.
You can tell your friends and family, Emily and Sally told me that the police are bad, and no matter what the movie industry or the television police complex tells me, I have to believe there are no good cops.
There aren't.
Ingrain it in your head.
Yep.
Emily told me. Oh, there you go. And everyone would be like, who's Emily? And you'd be like, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Don't Google her no matter what you do. Speaking of things I'm telling you, also in wheelie time, Matt and Tuan strike a bargain, which they seal with spit.
Gross. Not kissing, they spit on their hands.
Yeah. Ew. Yeah. To clarify, they spit on their hands. There is no smooching yet. But Tuan's like, yeah, I won't try and escape, and da-da-da-da-da. And Matt promises, like, once I have figured out a way to send you back home without, you know, incriminating myself and everyone that I'm with, putting everyone in danger, then I will.
Right.
So that is their bargain. Matt then leaves because one of Jolene's warders comes to get him and is like, the Aes Sedai want to talk to you. Matt goes to talk to the Aes Sedai, who are sharing a wagon with the Soldam, who escaped. Last week I referenced, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago I referenced the sort of sitcom housing arrangements that are going on here. This is the exception to that rule. This is just like a terrible decision by every metric.
Yep.
And there's absolutely no empathy has gone into it, you know, cramming a bunch of abusers and their abuse victims in the same.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's a horror show, but of course Robert Jordan is like, it's comedic. But the Aes Sedai are like, hey, big news is there's some sort of insane thing going on with the power, and we the readers know that this is the cleansing of Sidon. And Jolene's like, we have to go toward it. And Matt's like, obviously I'm not doing that. We're going in the opposite direction, like now.
Right.
And that's basically the extent of their conversation insofar as substantive information goes. But Matt does wonder if he'd had the dice rolling in his head and they stopped when he shook Tuan's hand. But also he starts to wonder, like, what was Rand doing when the dice stopped, you know? Which is a fun way to end that little chapter.
Yeah, more fun to think about the cleansing of Sidon than Tuan.
We then switch over to Kharid, who is an official in the Shanshan military, specifically the Death Watch Guards, which is basically like personal bodyguards for members of, high-ranking members of the Empire. If you'd read Path of Daggers, which of course we didn't, then Kharid showed up a couple of times in the long Ilian sequence where the Shanshan were fighting Rand's forces, and so we might recognize the name. Here we find out that Kharid was at one time one of Tuan's bodyguards when she was like a little girl. We find out that most of the high-ranking Shanshan are aware that Tuan is missing, but that they are not getting it out. But then this Inquisitor, the Shanshan Inquisitor, who's been wandering around with his little, you know, conspiracy theory board,
Jesus,
shows up to talk to Kharid and is like, seems like the rumors are starting to get out that she is missing, like, into the public, so that's gonna be a problem, and is like, here's my whole theory about it, linking it all back to Saroth as sort of the, like, puppeteer of this whole thing. He also thinks that Tom is the main mechanism behind this whole escape and kidnapping, which I don't blame him for thinking because, like we've said multiple times, Matt has not shared his resume as a general with other people.
Yeah, right. If your options are Tom killed 2 Kings Maryland or Matt just some guy Cathan, like,
Yeah.
who do you think it's gonna be?
It's just pretty hilarious then when everyone's like, oh, Tom. And Tom's like, it's not me, it's this 22-year-old.
Matt's like...
And Matt's like got his sunglasses on, like,
Yeah.
hey, fuck me.
Hey, it's me, Matt.
It's me, Matt.
I'm actually in charge of a very big army who
Yep.
are all obsessed with me.
Hello, welcome to my crib.
I'm Matt Cathan. Welcome to my crib.
And so basically Kareed goes off with like a hand-picked group of other people from the Death Watch guards and also these like Ogier gardeners who are like big badasses in Shandar, I guess. And they're all gonna go start looking for Tuon. The only like analysis part from that I would take from this chapter is that Kareed and his manservant play into the like noble savage trope.
Oh, yeah.
It's very like Tonto and the Lone Ranger going on. Kareed has this like guy who is, he describes him as like coming from being native to like the hills and like having a specific tribe, and he has all these inscrutable to Kareed traditions and things that Kareed doesn't understand and apparently makes no effort to understand.
Right.
I don't know, you'll read it and you'll get it.
Yeah, it's very egregious.
Yeah, just
for
like,
sure.
Okay, I don't know why Robert Jordan felt the need to throw this in as character flavor to Kareed, but I don't know why Robert Jordan does anything, so.
Yeah, as if Kareed does not have it. Like, Kareed Winterfell doesn't need any character flavor.
Yeah, he actually doesn't need to be a character.
He doesn't need to be a character. I don't need any more Shan Chin than I already have. Especially not one who is so deeply ingrained in the military. Yeah. You know, I'm done. But also, like, if Kareed absolutely needs to be there, he can just be a plot device, you know? Oh, we're being chased by this guy. End of Kareed.
I wish that was the end of Kareed. Anyway, that's Crossroads of Twilight.
His first name is also Furic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Fury with a K. And I'm like...
Furic.
Why?
Nice. Furic.
Furic.
Fuhrer.
Sounds like a,
Fuhrer,
Full Metal
King Bradley.
Alchemist name.
Yeah.
Furic.
Yeah, so that's those 2 chapters. I have nothing else.
There's nothing else to say. They're very boring. The circus will be leaving, though, at some point. We'll be hitting the road.
Least favorite character, Tuon. Favorite character, Tom.
Yeah. Let's see. Least favorite character, I would say the Soldam in the wagon.
That's a good one.
Just, like, all 3 of them.
Yeah, all bad.
Favorite character... Gosh, Tom really is the only option.
Harnan, maybe.
Harnan, my beloved.
Harnan.
I like to think of Harnan as sort of a Gene Havoc figure.
Ooh, yeah. That's a good one. Well, as always, a flawless episode.
As always, there's no faults. 10 out of 10 stars. Rate us on Yelp.
Yelp. Not even Apple.
Not even Apple Podcasts. Get on Yelp. Google reviews.
4 out of 4 stars.
4 out of 4 stars. Would eat there again.
Customer service great.
Thanks
everyone for listening. Thanks to Glenn McKenzie for our theme song, to our patrons on Patreon, and our followers on social media.
Yeah.
I feel like we've already got a sign off, which is that Tybalt
got his head stuck in a barf bag.
Yeah.
It was really so stupid.
Just think about that this weekend.
Remind me to post the picture I have of him. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, instead of Crossroads of Twilight, since this podcast was barely about it, just do
like, new episode.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.